Welcome to EFFector from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. You're listening to an audio companion to our email newsletter, keeping you on the cutting edge of digital rights issues. I'm Christian Romero.
And I'm Hudson Hongo. Later, we'll be covering more of this week's top stories, as well as letting you know about all the upcoming opportunities to connect with EFF. But first, we'll be talking to Sarah Hamid, Associate Director of Activism at EFF. She'll be discussing automated license plate reader networks and why feature updates can't make mass surveillance safe. Do you drive, Christian?
Yeah, it's basically a prerequisite to where I live to be able to drive around. How about you?
I do as well. I don't know if you've looked it up, but I have. And on some of the public maps, now I can see that I drive by at least 2 license plate readers every time I go to pick up groceries. And that's just, of course, like the ones that have been spotted and documented. I do not know, and I don't know that any of us can truly know how many of these devices are like capturing our movements as we go about our day.
Yeah. I haven't looked it up for myself, but I wouldn't be surprised if I drive past like a dozen on my way to work or something. I feel like we're finding new ones all the time.
Yeah. So I think maybe we've gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves. Here to go deeper into what this surveillance technology is and how people are pushing back against it is Sarah Hamid. Welcome, Sarah. Thanks for making time to chat.
Of course, it's wonderful to be here.
So from the top, what is ALPR or automated license plate readers?
ALPRs are essentially just a camera system that automatically scans and reads vehicle license plate. And they're usually mounted on poles, police cars, or street lights. Sometimes they are movable, so they're mounted in places that can be later relocated very easily. Sometimes they move because they're mounted on vehicles. And the system actually works through this like 5 interconnected component system where you drive by the camera, it captures your license plate, it converts it into machine readable text, and it stores the data with precise GPS coordinates and a timestamp in this network and processes it. And then that system is then sent to a central server and it's assessed against different lists, including hot lists and things like that. And it's then redistributed through an alert system. The system compares plate numbers against relevant databases, and it stores all that information for future reference and analysis and access through a user portal. A single ALPR system can capture thousands of plates per minute, and the data collection is staggering in scope. 99.9% of all ALPR data collected involves vehicles with absolutely no connection to criminal activity.
Right. So there might be just one ALPR camera at a single intersection. Not only is it going to be capturing every single vehicle that goes through that intersection, but with these networks, it's going to be combined with those same vehicles traveling through other intersections, creating kind of a complete map of, the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people's movements, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the intimate details of people's daily routines, their associations, and things as specific as even their political activities become available to anyone who's accessing this data. It's pretty much like a lawmaker in Denver recently described, like putting a GPS on anyone who drives in your city.
Now, there are a few different sort of vendors that are selling these ALPR cameras and associated networks in the U.S. As I understand it, Flock Safety, which is one of the biggest vendors, they alone have over, I believe, 80,000 cameras deployed in the U.S. right now. And as I understand it, these are sold to different sorts of city governments, police departments, even homeowner associations. And then it allows those customers to all share this vehicle tracking data effectively between them. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really convoluted sharing network mess of many, many, many layers. You have all of these local nodes, which in your city government alone, it's not even the police department that's just the only ones procuring. It's everything from sheriff's office to traffic control to parking enforcement, all of these different nodes. But then also at the local level, you have exactly like you mentioned, homeowners associations, businesses have flock networks, and all of that data gets shared up to different sharing networks at a regional level. Some of that is one-to-one sharing that's established between specific nodes, but some of that is also like county level sharing ecosystems or other kinds of regional ecosystems. Then there's an entire state lookup system that gets layered on top of that, which is multiple different agencies that are state agencies that are able to access it through various pathways. And then on top of all of that is a federal layer in which there's a national lookup, but also multiple ways in which federal agencies are able to access that very, very local data through all of these pathways. And I mention it being so convoluted and layered is because all of these different sharing partnerships, which are thousands of different sharing partnerships, have different use policies, have different rules governing them, and many times they rely heavily on humans being able to enact the specific use policies and rules. And sometimes humans aren't able to do that, as we're quickly finding.
Yeah, it seems to me that this technology suffers from sort of a fundamental problem that comes with surveillance technologies and data sharing, right? That a business might set up some of these cameras, let's say, with the original purpose of catching shoplifters or something. But then later, that data becomes available to federal authorities for totally different purposes, such as immigration enforcement. I know that in the last couple months, we've seen some concrete examples of the dangers that this data sharing poses. Can you tell me about any of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So ALPRs have actually been around for a while. They were introduced in the 70s in the UK to govern anti-terrorism in the UK, actually around the IRA and car bombs. And during that time in the 70s, the 80s, the cameras weren't that good. You can imagine the compute systems weren't that good. So these were very like siloed individual cameras that were trying to do something. And the evolution of ALPRs, because they've had such a long history, has kind of followed the evolution of computing technology writ large, right? And the things that computers have gotten very, very good at is exactly what ALPRs now have gotten very, very good at. And we are living in this moment in which databases are being integrated left and right because of AI enhancements being allowing us to integrate databases, but also because there's just a mass interest in integrating different databases, making different APIs connect to one another and speak to one another. And that's what's happening. It's not just that ALPR databases have this mass convoluted sharing network system, but that information is being combined in faster and more efficiently than it's ever been combined before, because that's what compute technology is doing. And as a result, you're seeing huge vulnerabilities because people are being put at risk in ways they weren't put at risk in just let's just say the past year, right? Because the political climate has shifted and priorities for things like federal agencies has shifted. So communities are finding that the integration of ALPR databases with other information is making it so that immigrants in their community are no longer safe. People are seeing that folks who try and access reproductive health care are no longer are safe because this databases are putting them at risk and it's allowing for their criminalization. And also you're seeing how more and more possibilities are opened up for adverse use of these databases once that information is made available.
Right. And I think part of the problem that you're hinting at is that responding to this, certain municipalities and states have passed laws specifically trying to control how this data is used. I know that California and Illinois have laws that prohibit certain types of sharing of this data with federal authorities, and even though those laws are on the books, I believe there's been a number of news stories in just the last couple of weeks that have shown concretely that federal agents have been accessing ALPR data in California and Illinois.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about how this one vendor, Flock Safety, has responded to reports of this kind of widespread abuse.
So one of the ways that it's responded is by deflecting all responsibility. So Flock is continuing to blame individual users and not its business model. Its business model, which by the way, scaled by allowing users to set their own privacy policies and their use policies, and offered a very, very low price point for surveillance tech. Flock is emphasizing that data sharing decisions are up to local customers entirely, and they cannot be held responsible. On the other side, of course, they're profiting off of this network model, and they're trying to create new surveillance networks. At the same time as all of this controversy was happening around ICE getting access to Flock data, Flock announced that it was setting up a business, which means a private business network that was very much resembled the law enforcement network that got them in trouble in the first place. They're also downplaying harms, right? They're looking at the controversies that have been in the media, and they're blaming victims. They're blaming individuals who have been stalked across the country using 83,000 cameras. And they're saying that what they're really doing is in the interest of public safety, just completely downplaying the risks that we're seeing right now in our communities as individuals are being disappeared and kidnapped in daylight, right? And last, they're doubling down, right? They're not limiting the sharing of their network. They're saying that they're shutting it off in certain instances without recognizing that there are human workarounds at every single level that make things like audit trails or make things like access restrictions ineffective effectively. And they're increasing, and we're seeing them continue to go out and pitch their product to cities across the country so that they can increase the span and the pervasiveness and the sprawl of their surveillance network.
It kind of does suggest an interesting problem here, right? If there are these sort of technical fixes they're trying to deploy to make their network safer aren't working, if local policies about ALPR safety are not preventing the kind of misuse that we've warned about in the past, it doesn't leave a lot of options on the table about how to deal with the dangers posed by ALPR networks.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, these have been around since 1970, which means we have seen a lot of iterations of everything from feature restrictions that try and protect privacy and policy restrictions that try and protect privacy. And we've seen failures at every single point. And one of the most interesting things about the long history of ALPRs is that at this point, the system has become fundamentally ungovernable. And when we're speaking to advocates, when we're speaking to lawmakers, the reframe here is that the ALPR network itself, because it's so sprawling, because it's so layered, because it's so ultimately complex and ungovernable, has become a public safety risk because this information can be putting people in harm's way.
Well, let me know, Sarah, how are people fighting back against ALPR networks, and what can our listeners do?
So thankfully, communities all across the country are not having it, right? They're not having it. They see the threat for what it is and they're speaking up. There's local advocacy happening. And so if you in your city know that ALPRs are there, speak to your local electeds because not only are community members standing up, but local electeds are also standing up across the country, right? And there's a lot of public awareness and coalition building happening. And cities are shutting off the data at the source. In many ways, municipal governments see themselves as the last line of defense when it comes to protecting us in this political moment. But when it comes to something like an ALPR, they're also the first line of exposure. So cities like Denver, cities like Austin, cities like San Marcos, they're shutting off the feed. And I urge everyone who's listening to reach out to their city electeds and to start getting their city to also join that movement and shut off their feed.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time to talk. It's been a real pleasure.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Christian, what are some of this week's other top stories that subscribers can read about in EFFector?
Yeah, well, we've definitely been busy and have a lot to cover this week. First up, EFF recently did an investigation into Axon's Draft 1, which is a product that uses audio gathered from an officer's body-worn camera to write an AI-generated police report. AI in policing is already scary enough, but we found that there's really no way to meaningfully audit these reports to see whether AI was used to write them. Recently, we also filed a friend of the court brief explaining why it's dangerous for the IRS to be sharing taxpayer information with ICE. Another thing we've been working on is exposing the airlines who are selling our names, flight itineraries, and financial details to law enforcement. It's just another example of the harms caused by the data broker industry. Oh, and last thing I'll mention, on our podcast, How to Fix the Internet, we spoke with Deirdre Connolly about what quantum computing means for the future of digital security. It's an interesting listen, even if you're not very tech savvy.
Thanks. And what opportunities to connect with EFF are coming up?
Yeah, if you're in San Mateo, California this weekend, you can find an EFF table at Open Sauce. There's also going to be a ton of chances to meet EFF at various talks and contests in Las Vegas during the Diana Initiative, B-Sides Las Vegas, Black Hat, and DEF CON 33 from August 4th through 10th. And of course, be sure to catch the EFF Awards live and in person in San Francisco on September 10th.
Well, thanks, Christian. That's it for this week's EFFector Audio Companion. Thanks for listening in.